This is what we were doing. We had done theorem 8.1. This is the only theorem whose proof is in your syllabus. Rest all the theorems will be used as such, means the result will be used as such in the questions. Otherwise, you don't have to prove them. There might be some results which we will be having in questions. Then we need to prove those. Means directly as such, any of these properties cannot be asked. But if there is a question where you might need to use this property, depending on how many marks the question carries, you might need to prove it. The first theorem that we did was, let's just go over once, that if you have a parallelogram and you draw any one diagonal, the parallelogram gets divided into two triangles, and those two triangles are congruent to each other. After that, we start with the properties of parallelogram, and these properties can be proven vice versa. Like, for example, if there is a parallelogram, we always say that the opposite sides are equal, and we can prove this with the same way we did theorem 8.1. The congruence that you proved in theorem 8.1, same congruence gives you this result, that the opposite sides of a parallelogram are equal by CPCT. Then we have theorem 8.3. It's the converse of the previous theorem. अब compare करो आप 8.3 और 8.2 को, the statement of 8.3 and 8.2, the theorems. 8.2 says that if it's a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal, whereas theorem 8.3 says that Theorem 8.3 says that if in a quadrilateral opposite sides are equal, both pair of opposite sides are equal. When they say each pair of opposite sides, they mean both pairs. So if there is a quadrilateral, say ABCD, and you're given that AB is equal to CD and AD is equal to BC, we can prove that this is a parallelogram. The proof is given here, although we are not doing it. You could prove that these two triangles are congruent. As you can see by SSS, you can prove the congruence of these two triangles. And after these two triangles are congruent, you can say that angle 1 is equal to angle number 2, which are forming a pair of alternate interior angles. And since the alternate interior angles are equals, the lines containing them will be parallel. This is how they can prove. Similarly, pair of angles formed here and here will be equal. We can mark them as 3 and 4. 3 and 4 will be equal by CPCT, and these are a pair of alternate interior angles. Therefore, the lines containing these two angles will be parallel. The diagonal will act as a transversal. So this is exactly the opposite we did in question number, theorem 8.1. We used these results to prove the congruence, whereas we are just going in reverse right now. So in case you want to see how it's done, you can prove it. And if you want to write side by side, you can note down on your book itself, use a pencil, and you can just quickly make bullet points if you want. Next property of a parallelogram is that the opposite angles are equal. That's theorem 8.4. We use this property. So if it's given that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, we can use that its opposite angles will be equal. So similarly, just the same theorem 8.1 में जो congruence की थी, उसी से ये result आया था. जब आपने दो triangles congruent किए, by CPCT you get that the opposite angles are equal. Now, the converse of this. Converse means if there is a quadrilateral in which opposite angles are equal, can you prove that quadrilateral is a parallelogram? So let us say that we have a quadrilateral here, A, B, C, D, and you're only given that angle A is equal to angle C, angle B is equal to angle D. Can you prove the congruence of, can you prove that this is a parallelogram?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you just go ahead and explain, Daksh?
Ma'am, according to theorem 8.5, if in a quadrilateral each pair of opposite angles is equal, then the figure is a parallelogram.
That's correct. I'm saying if we had to prove it, this is the result. This is a statement. Like 8.4 की statement है कि parallelogram के opposite angles equal होते हैं. हम ये prove कर सकते हैं by taking a parallelogram, drawing a diagonal. So we can start with the parallelogram in which the pair of opposite sides is parallel. So we could start with the parallelogram, and then eventually we can prove the congruence of these two triangles. Triangle ABC will be congruent to triangle CDA. From there, we can conclude that the opposite angles are equal. So we can start with this and we can prove this. I'm asking, how can we prove this? We need to start with this result, that pair of opposite angles is equal.
Ma'am,
Yes.
if
By
we draw a
ASA.
diagonal there and then ASA, they will be congruent, and by CPCT, alternate
CPCT.
interior angle will be equal, and in parallel lines only the angles are equal.
Okay, take a quick review. Try doing this in your copy and see if you get pair of congruent triangles. Like, we only have a pair of opposite angles equal, nothing else. There is just one pair which is equal. You cannot do this with congruence.
On the common diagonal.
Okay, two pairs. Third, you don't have third pair. This particular result cannot be done with the
Ma'am,
congruence.
can we use this property that opposite angles are equal, so the sides will also be equal?
No, that is in a triangle. That works in a triangle. If in a triangle two angles are equal, then their opposite sides are equal. You cannot do that in two separate triangles. That property is applicable to the triangle, like angles should be present in same triangle. Then the opposite sides of those two angles will be equal. As for this one, since we are only given this, that the opposite angles are equal, let's name them as x each and y each, the pairs which are equal. Now apply angle sum property. So you will have 2x plus 2y
2x
equals
plus
to
2y equal to 360.
From here, can you conclude x plus y is 180?
Yes, ma'am.
And these are pair of co-interior angles. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And what
Yes,
did we conclude? That the pair of co-interior angles is supplementary. This implies the lines containing them are parallel. So you will have the opposite sides parallel to each other, and your quadrilateral will be a parallelogram. Do you follow?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. This is one result which is not to be done, which cannot be done, I would say, which cannot be done using congruence. And I would suggest that while doing your questions, keep your mind open. Sari questions congruence ho, it's not necessary. There could be some questions jo directly conclude kiye ja sakte hain because we have a parallelogram or there is something else given in the question. Not necessary to do that congruence thing all over. So just a suggestion. Anyone with questions at this point? We are just going over the properties of parallelogram. अगर parallelogram होगा तो उसकी ये property होगी, और अगर कोई quadrilateral वो property आपके पास hold कर रहा है तो आप prove कर सकते हो कि वो वाला quadrilateral parallelogram है. हम जब questions करेंगे, अगर हमारे पास आ गया there is a quadrilateral और उसमें opposite angles equal हैं, तो हम बोल सकते हैं कि वो parallelogram है. Similarly, if you have a quadrilateral in which opposite sides are equal, you can say that quadrilateral will be a parallelogram. You won't have to prove it. You can just write it down. If you want to prove, just look at how many marks the question carries. If the answer for the question itself is very short, you could prove that result as such if you want. Then the next one is Theorem 8.6. This is also something you have been using. The diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. तो जब हम diagonals draw करेंगे, अगर हमारे पास parallelogram है. So this is what's given. ABCD is a parallelogram. And then we can prove that the diagonals bisect. So AO is equal to OC and BO is equal to OD. Can you think of how it could be proved?
We can prove DOC and AOB congruent.
That's right. We can prove these two triangles congruent, and by CPCT you can conclude these two results. You can use ASA property or AAS property to prove the congruence of these two triangles, and by CPCT you would get that AO equals to OC and BO equals to OD. I would suggest that you just take a quick look. How could it be done? Which congruence, or how the congruence will be written? Correspondence especially. Then 8.7 is the converse of 8.6, that अगर हमारे पास कोई ऐसा quadrilateral हो जिसकी दोनों diagonals bisect हो रही हों. Remember, we need both diagonals bisection. then we can say that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. सिर्फ एक डायगोनल अगर बाइसेक्ट हो रही है हम नहीं कह सकते, दोनों की बाइसेक्शन जरूरी है. तो इसमें आपके पास रिजल्ट बन जाएगा देयर इज अ क्वाड्रिलेटरल ABCD. कुछ भी नहीं पता उसके बारे में except for the fact that both of its diagonals are bisected, and we can prove that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Similar
By
result you can,
SAS,
yes, you can prove the congruence. By SAS you can take these pair of vertically opposite angles. By SAS you can prove the congruence of these two triangles, and then by CPCT the alternate angles will be equal and hence the lines containing them will be parallel. And similarly you can do for the triangles containing the other pair. That's it. Anyone
Ma'am,
with
can we
questions?
prove it?
8.6, how we can prove that this is a parallelogram?
In 8.6 we are not proving a parallelogram, we have a parallelogram. We prove diagonals are bisected.
How we can prove that?
Okay, just take a look. The triangles that I have highlighted, you can prove their congruence by using the properties of parallelogram. So I'm taking these triangles, triangle AOD and triangle COB. Since it's a parallelogram, अब मुझे ये दिया हुआ है कि parallelogram है, तो opposite sides parallel होंगी. These are the opposite sides. From here, I can conclude that the alternate interior angles are equal. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
And then I already have a result which says that if it's a parallelogram, the opposite sides will be equal.
Yes, ma'am.
This can be done by ASA. Or you could take the pair of vertically opposite angles and then apply AAS. By ASA, triangle AOD will be congruent to triangle COB. And you can conclude AO equals to OCO and OD equals to OB. ये इसके लिए है.
Okay, ma'am.
Give it a try, give it a try. When you write, sometimes you see it. In case you cannot, you can always get back to me. आप पूछ लेना कि मैम मैंने इतना लिखा है, and if maybe, yeah, just a hint could help you go along further. So just give it a try. Give it a try, you should know. In case अगर आपको कोई पूछ ले how is it done, you should know. Anyone with questions still here? Okay, after this, we have, I think, one more theorem, which is used repeatedly in questions. Yeah. Okay. So, till now, जितनी हमने results किए हैं, 7 theorems थी. पहली theorem थी कि parallelogram की diagonal divides the parallelogram into 2 triangles. The triangles are congruent. So that's a separate result. उसके बाद हमने जो theorems की हैं, 6 theorems की हैं, those were based on the properties of a parallelogram, that if there is a parallelogram, you can prove its properties. You can prove that the opposite sides are equal. You can prove that opposite angles are equal. You can prove that the diagonals are bisecting, and you can prove the vice versa as well. So if there is a quadrilateral having those properties, having opposite sides equal, you can prove that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So there are these results, but there is one special result which can be used to prove that a given quadrilateral is a parallelogram. The result is a quadrilateral will be a parallelogram if a pair of opposite sides is equal and parallel. आपकी जो theorem थी 8.3, उसमें ये लिखा हुआ है, you can go back, it's page 140. थ्योरम 8.3 में था कि अगर क्वाड्रिलेटरल के दोनों पेयर्स ऑफ ऑपोजिट साइड्स इक्वल हो जाएं तो हम उस क्वाड्रिलेटरल को पैरेललोग्राम प्रूव कर सकते हैं. बोथ पेयर ऑफ ऑपोजिट साइड्स शुड बी इक्वल, एंड बाय डेफिनेशन if both pair of opposite sides are parallel, then we can say that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now what we can do is, अगर हमें प्रूव करना है कि कोई quadrilateral parallelogram है, according to those two results, या तो हम प्रूव करें कि both pair of opposite sides parallel हैं, दो पेयर बनने हैं, दोनों पेयर्स पैरेलल हैं, तब हमारा क्वाड्रिलेटरल पैरेललोग्राम बन जाएगा, या फिर हम ये प्रूव कर दें कि बोथ पेयर ऑफ ऑपोजिट साइड्स आर इक्वल, हम ये प्रूव कर दें, पैरेलल ना प्रूव करें, हम दोनों पेयर्स को इक्वल प्रूव कर दें, इक्वल इन लेंथ, इवन देन वी कैन से दैट द क्वाड्रिलेटरल इज अ पैरेललोग्राम. बट इन बोथ दोज रिजल्ट्स वी हैव टू वर्क विद the pairs, both the pairs of opposite sides. This result here, theorem 8.8, suggests that just pick one pair of opposite sides, and for that particular pair, prove that the pair is equal as well as parallel. So, for example, if in this quadrilateral ABCD, I am able to prove that AB is equal to CD and AB is parallel to DC. If I can prove this, then I can conclude that ABCD is a parallelogram. Same pair को equal prove कर दो, उसी pair को parallel prove कर दो, of opposite sides, the pair of opposite sides, same pair. You don't have to do it for the other pair, just for one pair, and then you can say that your quadrilateral is a parallelogram. This would mean कि अगर ये चीज given है, कोई quadrilateral है जिसकी ये properties हैं, एक पेयर है ऑपोजिट साइड्स का जो इक्वल भी है और पैरेलल भी है, दूसरे पेयर के बारे में कुछ भी नहीं बोला हुआ, सो यू कैन प्रूव दैट your quadrilateral mentioned is a parallelogram. And as you can see, they have done this by drawing a diagonal here, and since AB is parallel to DC, they have taken a pair of alternate interior angles. These are forming a pair of alternate interior angles. Opposite sides are given equal, and then this is the common side. So by SAS, the two triangles are congruent, and then finally they have written that this angle is equal to this one. Angle 3 is equal to angle 4 by CPCT, which will make the other pair of opposite sides parallel, and hence the quadrilateral now has both pair of opposite sides parallel. Should I go over this again?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, Taranpreet?
Ma'am, can we directly write that diagonal divides the parallelogram into congruent triangle, and as
could
the
use that
triangles are
also.
congruent?
Yes, you could use that also. Make sure you write down the correspondence properly. No, wait. We are not given that it's a parallelogram. We have to prove that it's a parallelogram, so you cannot use that result. हमें प्रूव करना है, हमें पता नहीं है अभी तक कि वो पैरेललोग्राम है या नहीं, अभी बना नहीं है, सिर्फ इतनी सी खास बात है.
कॉन्ग्रुएंट प्रूव करने के बाद वो डायगोनल ही है तो कॉन्ग्रुएंट हो गए तो पैरेललोग्राम बन जाएगा.
No, it's not necessary. It could happen in any quadrilateral that the opposite pairs, the triangles are congruent, not in generally in simple quadrilateral. अगर कोई आपके पास quadrilateral है जिसमें आप दो triangles की congruence prove कर देते हो, the diagonal divides that triangle in parallelogram into two congruent triangles. I don't think it could be a parallelogram for sure. Maybe I'll just give it a thought. I haven't thought that way, that if a quadrilateral has a diagonal dividing it into two congruent triangles, that quadrilateral will be a parallelogram. Because उसका converse होना था, otherwise उसका converse नहीं है हमारे पास. But I will definitely give it a thought in case that result works. But as for now, you cannot use it. You have to do this by proving the congruence of those two triangles. And then from congruence, you get alternate interior angles equal. The other pair. One pair is equal because we have one pair of opposite sides equal. The other pair, the one I've indicated in green, will be concluded by CPCT. And then it will make the second pair of opposite sides parallel. You are saying that once you prove the congruence, you can say that it's a parallelogram, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just doubtful about that. I'll definitely look up if it's correct. I'll let you know. But as for now, to my knowledge, I think it doesn't work. Maybe I'll definitely look at it. I hope it's clear. Anyone with any questions? All right. Do go over these results. We will be using these repeatedly in the questions, and every time I write a result, it might be confusing कि ये कहाँ से आया. In the chapter summary, all the results are given in compact form कि अगर हमारे पास parallelogram है तो उसकी क्या क्या properties होंगी, और अगर हमें proof करना है कि कोई quadrilateral parallelogram है तो हम क्या proof कर सकते हैं. So this is right here. We have written all of these. This is angle sum property, then the first theorem and the properties of parallelogram given as such. And then if you want to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, you can prove either of these four results. There are 4 points given here. आप इनमें से कोई एक भी अगर prove कर दो तो आपका जो quadrilateral होगा वो parallelogram बन जाएगा. Opposite sides are equal means both pairs of opposite sides are equal. Opposite angles are equal. That means both pairs of opposite angles are equal. Then diagonals bisect each other. A pair of opposite angles is equal and parallel. So just pick one pair of opposite sides, prove that particular pair is equal in length as well as parallel. Then you can say that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. This is what they have. Now, further, we have some properties of types of parallelograms. I think these are in the exercise as well in the form of questions. So we will be just starting with the exercise. 8.1, there are just a couple of questions deleted from this exercise. Question number 8 and question number 11. Yeah, these two questions are deleted. We have to do the rest of the exercise. First question, I think you can do it on your own. The angles of a quadrilateral are in the given ratio. Find the measures of all the angles. So when you are given the ratio of angles of a quadrilateral, to begin with, you can assume the angles as 3x, 5x, 9x, and 13x, respectively, the 4 angles. And then we can apply the angle sum property of the quadrilateral, which says that the sum of these 4 angles will be equal to 360 degrees. From here, find out x and then find out the measures of all angles. Let's write quickly.
It's 12.
X is 12.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you have 36 degrees, 60 degrees, 108 degrees, and
156 degrees.
156 degrees. Done?
Yes, ma'am.
Question number 2. Now, your questions containing those proof things begin. If the diagonals of a parallelogram are equal, then show that it is a rectangle. Now you are aware कि rectangle में उसकी diagonals equal होती हैं. आपको prove करना है कि अगर आपके पास कोई parallelogram है जिसकी diagonals equal length की हैं, then that parallelogram is a rectangle. In general, the diagonals of a parallelogram are not equal. So if the parallelogram's diagonals are equal in length, the parallelogram will be a rectangle. And whatever you want to prove, draw the figure accordingly so that it's easier to comprehend. आपको यहाँ पे प्रूव करना है कि आपके पास जो फिगर बनी है वो रेक्टेंगल बना है. So draw a rectangle in your answer.
Ma'am, can you please repeat what you said? Because of network issue, I didn't hear.
श्योर आपके पास जब क्वेश्चंस आएंगे कि आपको प्रूव करना है कि जो क्वाड्रिलेटरल बन रहा है वो इस टाइप का क्वाड्रिलेटरल बन रहा है, मींस पैरेललोग्राम बन रहा है या रेक्टेंगल बन रहा है या रोम्बस बन रहा है, माय एडवाइस इज कि आप वही फिगर ड्रॉ करो जो प्रूव करना है। जैसे क्वेश्चन नंबर 2 में आपको प्रूव करना है कि जो पैरेललोग्राम बनेगा वो रेक्टेंगल बनेगा, तो मैं पैरेललोग्राम नहीं ड्रॉ कर रही हूँ, आई एम ड्रॉइंग अ रेक्टेंगल सो दैट it's easier to see what I'm doing. Whatever I will write, it will make sense. So just a suggestion. आप वैसे भी start करोगे, आप कर सकते हो, but it's easier. It's a little easier when you can see what's going on and then you can conclude the results. जो prove करना है वैसे ही figure draw कर लो. So I am drawing a rectangle here. Let's name the parallelogram here ABCD, and I've been given that its diagonals are equal. Start by writing down given and to prove. We have been given that ABCD is a parallelogram. All the properties that the parallelogram has can be used now. एक बार उन्होंने बोल दिया कि ABCD क्वाड्रिलेटरल है, तो हमें ABCD पैरेललोग्राम है, तो हमें जितना कुछ पता है पैरेललोग्राम के बारे में हम यहाँ पे यूज कर सकते हैं। Along with that, there is something special that the diagonal AC is equal to BD. And we want to prove that ABCD is a rectangle. So just for your reference, all properties of parallelogram can be used. And to prove that it is a rectangle, prove any one angle equal to 90 degrees. This is what you want to do. You want to prove any one angle equal to 90 degrees. Maybe you can prove more than one, but we are just focusing on one by definition, that if in a parallelogram, one angle is 90 degrees, then your parallelogram will be a rectangle. Is the question clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now to prove this, as I told you earlier, there will be multiple questions जिनमें congruence से result आएगा हमारा. Maybe you don't need to use congruence, but congruence is one of the major options that you will have to prove your answers. So right now I would just advise you to look at the two triangles that you have on the common base AB. So common base AB has two triangles, ABD and ABC. I'm not mentioning the names in the particular correspondence, simply बोल रही हूँ मैं नाम. आपके पास बेस कॉमन है इन दोनों ट्राइंगल्स का, हम इनको कॉन्ग्रुएंट प्रूव करेंगे. कैन यू थिंक ऑफ अदर प्रॉपर्टीज?
S.
That's correct. One
yes,
such
yes.
property is that opposite sides are equal. Third property,
90-degree angles are equal. Each angle is 90.
we are not given the parallelogram to be a rectangle. We have to prove it.
Ma'am,
Yes.
from here we can say that angle A is equals to angle B and angle A plus B equals to 180 degree.
That's correct. That's correct. These are the three pairs we will be using to prove the congruence of the triangles. I hope everyone can see the properties that I'll be writing down while proving the congruence. Common base है मेरे पास, एक पेयर है पैरेललोग्राम की ऑपोजिट साइड्स का, वो इक्वल हो जाएगा, और जो तीसरा पेयर हम ले रहे हैं, दोज आर एक्चुअली दी डायगोनल्स, जो मुझे बता दिया गया था बिगिनिंग में कि इक्वल हैं. तो मेरे पास तीन पेयर्स बन गए. यूजिंग दीज थ्री पेयर्स ऑफ equal parts of the triangle, I can prove the congruence. I will have two triangles congruent to each other. Make sure you write down the correspondence correctly now. In triangle ABD and triangle BAC, take a moment. and then write down AB is equal to BA. This is the common side. BD is equal to AC. This is given. And then finally, AD is equal to BC. These are opposite sides of parallelogram. I'm going to mark the angles by numbers rather than naming them. So this angle will be equal to this one.
Excuse me,
Yes, Shriji?
ma'am, what you have written in the bracket?
CPCT. You might observe one thing here, like right at the last 3 steps, where I have written that angle 1 is equal to angle 2 by CPCT. The second result about angle 1 and angle 2 is that they are forming adjacent angles of the parallelogram. So they'll be supplementary. So at any given time, if there is a result where two angles are equal and their sum is 180, you can directly conclude that each of these will be 90 degrees. You don't have to prove it. You can prove it. आप दोनों एंगल्स की वैल्यू को x ले सकते हो, फिर x प्लस x 180 बनेगा, वहां से x की वैल्यू 90 डिग्रीज आएगी. लेकिन आपको इतना लंबा चौड़ा काम नहीं करने की जरूरत. आप सिंपली लिख सकते हो दो एंगल्स जो इक्वल हैं and they are supplementary, each of these will be 90 degrees each. हमें तो प्रूफ करना था सिर्फ एक एंगल 90, हमने प्रूफ कर दिया कि इस पैरेललोग्राम के दो एंगल्स 90 डिग्रीज हैं. Hence this parallelogram is a rectangle. Anyone with any questions?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Question number 3, show that if the diagonals of a quadrilateral bisect each other at right angles, this if part is given part, then it's a rhombus. This is to prove part. So this is what's given. You are given a quadrilateral. The diagonals bisect each other at right angles. You have to prove that the quadrilateral given here is a rhombus. You have to prove. अब हमें पैरेललोग्राम भी नहीं दिया, सिर्फ क्वाड्रिलेटरल दिया है जिसकी डायगोनल्स बाइसेक्ट कर रही हैं एक दूसरे को, एंड द एंगल एट व्हिच द डायगोनल्स इंटरसेक्ट इज अ राइट एंगल. Since we want to prove it a rhombus, I'm going to draw a rhombus. You can indicate whatever is given. You are given that the diagonals are intersecting at right angles. So you can just indicate one angle here, 90 degrees. Other than that, the diagonals are bisecting each other. So the parts of the diagonal AC are equal and the parts of the diagonal BD are equal. So by definition, a rhombus is a parallelogram in which all four sides are equal. And this is what we would like to prove here, that the quadrilateral formed in this figure here, it's a parallelogram first thing, and then all four sides of this parallelogram are equal to each other. And we can conclude that the quadrilateral is a rhombus. So in order to prove that this is a parallelogram, you can directly use the property that the diagonals are bisecting each other. If the diagonals bisect each other in a quadrilateral, that quadrilateral will be a parallelogram. So the first part can be done directly. अगर ये question 4 marks में आ जाए तो आप prove करोगे how a quadrilateral in which the diagonals bisect each other becomes a parallelogram. As for now, we are going to directly write this down, that since ABCD is a quadrilateral in which the diagonals bisect each other, it will be a parallelogram. And if we had to write down the proof for this, depending the question carries more marks, then we can write down the proof. So I will be writing down the